Then we have the Station Archivist. And here we have Corinna. You can see her, like, hanging out in Piltover Enforcer HQ, getting all the information she needs. This is basically when she gives that case that we saw in Insider Knowledge for Corinna to examine. So that's part of that storyline. The Station Archivist herself, though, is a card that we know from Foundations. Yeah, let's see, Piltover Sun. She's the astute academic who has basically found a new job with the Piltover Enforcers, which I thought was quite lovely. Oh no, God, Foundations, go away. Don't need you. Where is she? Where did I go? There. She's now the Station Archivist instead, which I thought was like a nice little continuation of her story. And the cat is indeed Fun Yip, by the way. So what happened last time we saw Fun Yip, he was falling through the air as the fallen feline, and Echo saves him and then takes him back through time. And because Echo's powers, remember, like when he goes back through time, it reverses damage and changes done to his body a little bit. So they reversed Fun Yip back far enough that he lost his... Like, he lost his cybernetic eye, he lost his cybernetic enhancements, and so he gets shifted back through time. Echo basically, I think, delivers the cat to the Piltover Enforcers or something, or gives him to the Station Archivist, who then adopts poor Fun Yip as a pet, while his broken foot, which was apparently broken in the fall or something, I don't know how exactly the timeline works out, to nurse him back to health. So that is Fun Yip hanging out with the Station Archivist there. Just, he's gone through like a time warp, and there's been all kinds of nonsense going on. They also retcon Catastrophe. Yeah, like, necessarily, sort of. I'm not 100% sure how they're handling those timelines, but yeah, that's basically the idea, is that Fun Yip is now hanging out with the Piltover Enforcers, being a very annoyed little office cat who, like, wants to get out of there, but can't because everyone is just, like, fawning over him too much. Why does Fun Yip have more lore than, like, half the champions? Yeah. He is the character in the game who has the most cards that he appears in, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Fun Yip is the character who appears in more cards than any other character in Legends of Runeterra. So yeah, framing and aesthetic, not much to say there. We've kind of gone over all of the things already. I will say I do really like the character design of this one. Like, I like the vest. I like the saturated red shirt against the pale teal, not teal, tan, against the pale tan skirt. And like the big glasses. It's just a very appealing character design. It's just a very nice character. I really like her. She's so pretty. Except LeBlanc. Yes, fair enough, Axolotl. Except LeBlanc. And then we have the tidal wave, which goes from like this wave to this wave to this wave. And the thing I wanna compliment it on one thing, that it didn't go into the sort of tedious thing of referencing the wave, which is like the tedious thing that you all like, which is the tedious thing that people always do. The Great Wave of Kawanaga, which is the Hokusai. Is it Hokusai? Is that his name? It is Hokusai. Like, that they didn't reference this image. Like, props to them for not like doing a direct reference to that. Because that's kind of such a hack thing to do, but instead they just kept it on the idea of just the wave throwing over a boat. Like, it's not dissimilar, but it's not like the direct, like, oh, we're just gonna put the wave in our thing. So, another one of Zerath's minions. Is Sump Fumes worth looking at? Is it? I don't think so. Like, it's just Wumps eating mushrooms. So, the Waste Walker, another one of Zerath's minions. And you can see here it's confronting a Sand Soldier, which seems to be a little bit overmatched by this thing. And, yeah, again, framing and composition-wise, not much to say, because, like, it It's obviously the main character by virtue of it is a big, giant, glowing thing right in the center of the image, and nothing else is nearly as bright as it is. It retains, in terms of character design, like, here we see a little bit of that repetition of, like, Serath's sort of... Serath has this fundamental character theme of being someone who tried to escape being controlled by others, right? Like, he's a slave who wanted to escape his slavery. And so some of that carries over into some of the character design of his minions. Like, you can see this guy here, who's essentially, like, held up by these fragments of obelisk. So he's, like, dancing on Serath's strings, is the idea there. So, control. And this guy has this thing of, like, he has this Chinese finger trap thing. Like, he has this like, manacles or shackles-looking thing that his arms are trapped in, and chains coming off it with blades. Like, so there's, like, a little bit of that sort of being chained up, imprisoned, breaking your chains. Like, there's a little bit of that imagery there, sort of. But then a bunch of Serath's minions don't really have that, which is why I've been sort of lukewarm on them, is that a lot of them just don't really... That thematic is not really fully carried through into the character. Serath should have arm bindings like this guy does. Yeah, like, that would be better on Serath, because, like, that's his whole thing. But yeah, it's like, I'm sort of lukewarm on the character designs of all of Serath's minions, because, like, the theme is there, kind of, but it's not carried through. Like, it's not really applied fully to all of them, which is like, eh. I'm not even sure these elementals are people. Yeah, like, it seems to be like, these guys here seem to be human, like these, or at least partly human somehow, and then the rest of them seem to be elementals or extensions of Serath's power or something or other. It's not 100% clear. I will say, in this artwork, I really love, like, the earth kind of being shattered and torn apart by the power. Like, you get this sense of, like, this swirling storm that sort of appears at the feet of this creature, like, holds it up. You kind of really do get the sense of unleashed power, like, tearing the world apart as this thing moves forward, which I think is quite nice. Ah, the Yordle newbie. Just trying to face off against this giant grass monster as Ava sits there. I have found the thing that we're looking for. Oh, that's not good. As this poor guy tries to fend off this thing with a knife that's basically strapped to a stick. And you can see he's got, like, a fork strapped onto there as well. A very improvised weaponry all around. And you can see here in the background that the furious Feyfolk is swinging into the rescue as this grass monster emerges out of the ground. I need to sit down, by the way. I've been standing for the last 3 hours. There we go. Lowered my desk. Ah, that's better. So yeah, again, like, compositionally the same things we've talked about, but there's also a frame here. You can see the monster traveling into the branches of the tree. Like, this whole thing creates a little frame around the poor Yordle newbie as he's trying to hold off the beast. Like, very heroically trying to defend Ava, even though he's clearly terrified out of his mind, with this little improvised weapon. And it's like a really nice pose on him, because you can see, like, he's reluctant but determined. And that does kind of come through, like, in the way that he's framed and presented, which I quite like. And then, of course, there's Ava's face, which is like, oh shit, like... It's such an oh shit face. I really like it. So, here's the Wisened Wizard, which is one of Vhagar's minions, obviously, and then there's the minions! Actual minions, which are also Vhagar's minions. We have a caster minion here in the background, and we have these other little minions, like, just standing there, doing stuff like watching him transcribe, using the Dark Vhagar power, or whatever, to transcribe runes into a book at the behest of Lord Vhagar, who wants something to be written down for whatever reason. So, composition and framing, here we're using the vanishing point again. Like, you can see, if you pay attention to any of the perspective lines in the background of the image, you can see how they all kind of converge a little bit around this guy. We have these ornamentations in the background that sort of all curve inwards towards our central character. So he's very central in the image. He's very central in the scene. And so everything sort of ends up pointing to him. And so do these tendrils of darkness that like swirl around. They all sort of come towards him and seem to move at his command. So like all the action in the image revolves around the central guy. And that's what keeps us grounded and centered on him as the main character. And then we have the Abyssal Garden. Here again, like just lovely use of mermaid ideas that aren't bound to just being person plus fishtail. Oh yeah, Ganondoodles, go to bed, sleep. This stream is not that important, I promise you. The VODs will be up tomorrow and you can watch it there. Again, lovely variety in the way that you design a mermaid, because here we have a mermaid that first of all has these octopus tentacles rather than like just being like a fishtail, but then those octopus tentacles, rather than being octopus tentacles, have the same sort of frilly fins and like fans that Nami has like on her tail as well, like these sort of frilly sort of goldfish fishtails things coming off them that gives them this wonderfully fuzzy sort of flappy quality that it works really well. It's a really, really cool character design, and then you extend that into giving him these long flappy wings and like these fins coming off of his face. Like, it's an absolutely gorgeous character design. Really well composed and put together in terms of just how different and odd it is. Jellyfish Manta Ray. Yeah, basically. Like, this is just such a cool version of a mermaid creature. Again, this thing about... Yeah, merfolk, yes. Like, this thing about taking the basic idea of person plus undersea creature and just not only changing the creatures that you're using as inspiration, but mixing and matching different sea creatures as well. So, like, octopus plus goldfish. Octopus, like crustacean plus another thing. Like, I just think that's really nice. That's really cool. And it makes Nami, like, it makes me have much less of a problem with Nami's character design, because now there is variety, and we get to see that Nami is just, like, one out of many different possible options for what the Mariah can be. And yeah, nothing new in the framing or the aesthetic. Again, he's more rendered, he has more color, he has more contrast, everything else is desaturated relative to him. I do like the pose, like he's got this arm outstretched as though like, it looks as though Nami is being chased by something, right? Like Nami is fleeing from something, carrying the corrupted moon pearl, and he's like throwing out an arm and saying, "I'll take care of it, you just flee." Which I think is like good little bit of storytelling, that he is the abyssal guard, like he's the guy who guards from the abyss spreading any further than it has already gone. Then we have the aloof travelers, and I really like these two. Worst trip ever. Because like she has this total like, ugh, you dropped something. I don't want to be here. I think this is stupid. And he has like this much more loud, whiny sort of complaining thing. And these two are like clearly these two day trippers who like showed up to join the Yordle scouts for like a day or two because their dad told them so or whatever. And they just don't want to be there. And now the Yordle troop are stuck lugging these two idiots around who like don't know how to do anything and who carry way too many things and like have carrying like these robes and clocks and God knows what else, useless garbage, tourist nonsense. So like just as characters, they're a lovely contrast with like because all the Yordle scouts otherwise, they're so earnest, right? Like Yordle scouts, 2, 3, 4. Like they're so earnest, they care so much, they're so dedicated to like the survivalist thing. And then you have these two little spoiled brat assholes just, like, getting dragged along and having to learn important life lessons. Absolutely fantastic. I love them. You dropped something. I dropped everything! Yeah. Like, this is lovely characters. And again, compositionally, they are raised, like here, like standing on top of all of this stuff, basically. You can see the background is desaturated and sort of flat color, mostly. And they're separated visually and, like, separated physically from the rest of the Yordle scout troop because they are separate from them. They don't want to be part of them. And you can see Ava over here giving them, like, a very dirty look because she's like, oh, God, tourists. This one, not really much to say about it. I just really like this. Like, I really like the screaming, melting face in the background. I think it's really cool. And also, this This to me feels like a tease that Pantheon is coming, just because warring against the gods seemed a fool's errand, but through the scars and through the screams, those brave few learned lessons. The gods thought singularly selfishly and had lost the gift of camaraderie. This would be their weapon, this would be their armor. That, to me, feels like Pantheon shit. Like, that feels like Pantheon stuff. Like, that feels like they're associated with Atreus. Like, that feels like they're teasing that he might be a character who's coming to the game at some point, which would be nice. Oh my god, someone in chat has the name Peck Me Ilawi, which is very valid, honestly. So, Benemone. So this is like an anemone creature, which again, lovely diversity of sea creatures in like the Legends of Runeterra, where it's not just fish and it's not just like crabs, but it's like all kinds of different sea creatures being used to create these interesting like monsters and beasties for characters to interact with. And the Benemone is an anemone, obviously, with a big friendly smile and too many tentacles. Just kind of hanging out, lounging on the seafloor, and playing around with this dude by swinging him through the water. As he screams for air and is probably about to drown, which is a little dark. Hentai potato. Oh no, don't call it that. Don't call it that. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, we're moving on. We're moving on. We're not analyzing that anymore. We're moving on. Moving on. Moving on to the catalog of regrets, appropriately. As we get a visit from a friend. A friend whom we all love. Unbound Thresh is hanging out. He's standing there with his lantern doing Thresh things. Just hanging out. But anyway, the catalog of regrets itself seems to be some sort of library of pain and suffering and misery. Which, you know, is why Thresh would be there. But what I really like about this thing is the composition. Like, I really like the compositional idea of, like, first of all, you have the frame of the library itself, right? Like, you can see this thing creates a frame around it. And then you have this pile of books, and then on top of that pile of books, this stone arch of floating stone that's, like, half shattered, and then that one book just sitting there open, sort of billowing in this vast and wild wind that's whipping through this place. Like, that's just, as an image, as imagery, that's really compelling and cool, where you get the sense of, like, this pile of books cannot possibly stand, like, there's nothing supporting it, and yet there it sits. And, like, you can see, like, you can also see the colors on the pile of books is much warmer. Like, there's much more warmth to the colors on the pile of books relative to everything else in the scene, which is part of what makes the thing stand out. And just, like, the imagery of, like, that one arch and that book hovering open in the middle of it, that's just really good. That's just a really, really nice composition.
Alice here holds 2 shots. One's a greeting, the other's a farewell. You two want to meet?
So here we have the Gruff Grenadier, and probably the Yordle who's closest to having essentially Graves' gun, with his big double-barreled shotgun that shoots big spiky metal acorns or whatever at creatures like the big ugly thing that they're driving back from the Bandel portal. And yeah, like framing and composition, you can see the tree that he's covering behind is doing a little, like, sort of leads into his back, which sort of leads into the branch that he's sitting on, which again helps separate him a little bit from the scene of the thing that he's actually shooting at, which is the big tree monster thing, whatever it is. So, like, again, this thing of separating the character from the action, not completely, like, he's not completely covered by anything, but you get the sense, like, he's covering before he's rejoining the action. And that sense of separation is also enforced with the light, because you can see, like, the explosion that's going off on the big troll creature, in the background there, that casts this strong edge lighting all along the Yordle himself and all along the tree branches around where they're doing the battle. But that golden lighting, you can see it doesn't extend into the background over here. So you get, again, this separation of spaces where here's the battle, here is relative safety as they're covering. And it just works really well. Like, it's just a perfectly nicely executed bit of framing. And then you have the secondary framing with the back of the buff Yordle into this. That sort of creates a framing for the monster that they're fighting, which is like a secondary character in the image. Then we have Justice Rider, which... This one's maybe a little cartoony. I feel like this one is maybe a little much. It's in terms of like, okay, so apparently Piltover has motorcycle cops. Not only do they have motorcycle cops, these people dressed like lunatic superheroes. Like this looks like a knockoff, like it escaped from a sort of middle tier Sentai show. I get this one's maybe a little like, especially for the Piltover enforcers. This one's a bit much. Like this one's a bit children's cartoon for me. Like a little much. It's funny. Yeah, I mean it's funny, but like it kind of shouldn't be. Like I don't think that's really the vibe of the enforcers in the same way. But yeah, I think someone says in the chat, like the idea seems to be that she's like this character is like a motorcycle Piltover patrol person, and they just like go way too hard with it, like they go way overboard, and they have like a big costume, and they sort of think of themselves as the coolest person in the world. But it is like, for me, it's a little much. Like for me, it's a little outside of the aesthetic of the Piltover enforcers. So, you know, doesn't really work for me. But as a composition, it works quite well. We have these barrels that are like falling off the truck that this officer is in pursuit of, which seems to be like the what's he called? Salesman guy. Yeah, it seems to be the used cask salesman who's like just like dragging his merch around. And she like in pursuit, trying to prevent him from being able to get his stuff to Piltover or to a buyer or whatever it is. And so you have this swoop, right? Like you have this swoop of like this canister that's falling off, and these barrels like swoop you into the truck itself, and that creates like this little sort of like flow in the image that drives your attention to the central character, which of course more highlighted, more saturated, higher contrast, sort of being centered as the main character of the image with direct sunlight coming down upon them. And then there's the lecturing Yordle. Like, don't get him started. Well, back in my day, this kids, they had respect for their elders. Like, that's his whole character. It's just he's an old dude with a big beard who lectures everybody about how things were better when he was a kid. As Ava is doing her very best to set up Yordle snap traps to use in whatever it is the Yordle Scout troop is doing, as Teemo is sort of excitedly coming along behind everyone. So not much framing. Like there's a little bit with the tree here going into Ava's backpack, sort of creating this sort of half frame above him, into which points like his lecturing finger. He's the most central character. He's the most, he's not the most central, but he's the most frontmost character. He's the biggest character, and he's highlighted more than Ava is. Ava is the secondary character because she's the one who's listening to all of his nonsense. But yeah, all the same things it's a boomer Yordle. It's a boomer Yordle, basically. It's a complaining grandpa Yordle. Then we have the Mariah Great Mother, and again, like, motherfucker is some fucking cool-ass goddamn mermaid merfolk creatures. Just look how cool, motherfucking cool this is. This is so rad. Like, with the scales that look like feathers almost, like, down, and, like, she's got these growths coming out of her back, like anemones or coral or whatever it is, like this big mane of hair. And, like, this big sort of cloak of, like, a fin that just billows out behind. Like, it's just a fucking cool character design. Like, it's just such a cool character design. Ah, that's cool. That's good. Like, again, that's the thing that, like, this is the thing I want from character design. This is the thing I want from, like, when you have a type of creatures like the Mariah, that you do this shit. Where it's like, okay, we have fish, we have humans. How many different ways can we combine them? Like, how many different ways can we find to express the idea of sea creature mixed with human anatomy? How many ways can we find to express the idea of a mermaid without just doing a mermaid? And, like, they've done such a good job with the Mariah of, like, making them appealing, different, interesting, and strange. Like, especially strange. not just pretty human in cosplay, but weird human-like creature. Like, absolutely excellent. I love these character designs so much. And again, it's double scene. Like, again, Nami is the secondary character here, but she's this secondary character to the Mariah Great Mother, who's giving her, this is the Moonstone, like it's been corrupted and it needs to be purged of its corruption, and Nami's job is to do that. So, like, you have this scene between these two characters, like, linked by this trail of bubbles, basically. And, like, the Mariah Great Mother, just, like, with her big cloak, like, enveloping the whole scene, is just, it's gorgeous. Like, she takes up so much space, but without feeling like she's an overbearing character. It's wonderful, and her posture is good, too. And I appreciate that there's wrinkles on her. Like, if you look around, like, her, like, around the places where she's bending, that she actually has slightly wrinkly skin. Like, it actually seems like she looks a little older than the other mermaid creature, the other merfolk, which are so smooth all the time. And then we have the Stilted Robe Maker. And here's something fucking cool. Like, we're playing with non-binary gender aesthetics with the Yordles, which I think is very cool. Like, we have this character where there's a mustache, there's a beard, but there's also eyeliner and eyeshadow. They're wearing enormous platform heels, like just the biggest platform heels you can imagine. They've got some, like, a version of Vhagar's outfit that's a little bit more feminine, like in the way that it presents with like a bit of a skirt, and this long cloak of powerful magic in the background. Yeah, absolutely excellent. I don't know the gender of this character. Like, I don't know if it's a non-binary character or what it is. But I just appreciate that they're playing with different kinds of gender expression, like fucking around with it a little bit. For like a big queer-coded villain character, which I really appreciate. They look like a drag queen. No, I don't think they do. At least, well, I mean, it's not that I haven't been to a drag show in a very long time, but drag aesthetic, as far as I know, is mostly this heightened hyper-femininity. Like, to the best of my knowledge, you don't see a lot of beards at drag shows usually. But then, like, my knowledge of that one might be outdated. But, like, I like that they're fucking around with gender expression, and that they're using Yordles to do it. Because that's cool. Again, that's a thing of, like, people often accuse me, and it's very tedious and annoying, but people often accuse me of, like, oh, you just want every character to be gay or whatever. No, motherfuckers, I want one character. Like, I just want 1, 2... Could we have 3 characters that are, like, not cis? Just 3. Out of 150, let's just have 3 characters that are not cis. Just 3. Like, out of 150, let's just have 5 characters that aren't straight. Just doesn't have to be that many, just fucking some. And this is very nice. We have a character, finally, that messes with, like binary gender, that messes with gender presentation, so that we also explore that part of what you can do with character design, instead of being stuck in just the same boxes over and over and over and over and over again, which fantasy is often so bad at. Like, fantasy is often really kind of regressive and conservative in the way that it plays with gender, especially. And, like, gender is one form of expression of a character. Gender is one place where you can design a character to be interesting, to be different, to express something. And so when you refuse to engage with that, like when you say, we have 10, 15 gender options of various forms of gender fluid, or like non-binary, or like demi-genders and whatever, but we're only going to use 2 options, like male or female. That's the only ones. Like, it's like just cutting yourself off from a huge spectrum of possibility of character design. And it's so dumb and pointless to do so, because you can do interesting things with it. So yeah, I think that's cool. Like, it doesn't make them automatically a good character design. Like, just because they have, like, non-conforming gender aesthetics, that doesn't automatically make them a good character. It doesn't automatically make it good. But it means that, like, you gain the virtue of doing something different, of showing people something new. Right? And that is a virtue of having more variety, more different things, more experiences, instead of just the same shit over and over and over again. Anyway, compositionally, something we've seen before, we have this pyramid shape that rises out of the center of the image, and inside that pyramid, we have our main character occupying it. We have the contrast, we have the saturation, that's all going on there, and then every other character in the scene, which is another way that you can center a character, every other character in the scene is reacting to or acting in service of our central character, which is another way you can center a character in an image. So that all works really well. And then, of course, like the added benefit of all these tendrils of dark magic become like threads or lines that draw our attention to the central character in the image. And then we have the Swole Scout, who is still so fucking cursed. Like, this, you shouldn't have a buff Yordle. I know I just said all this stuff about diversity, but buff Yordles, no, they're banned. I don't like them. They're too cursed. No, it's fine. It's completely fine. But he's a good character, though. Like, he's very distinct. As the Yordle Scout Troop are making their way through hostile waters, we have the Furious Faefolk. We have Ava in the front, carrying her enormous backpack. We have Teemo overseeing the whole thing. And we have the dude being like,
yeah, I can march through water. I do 10 miles of marching through water with my CrossFit team. What's my secret? You'll have to ask the Bicep. They do all the talking.
So again, we have a Dutch angle here, which is both because, well, there's a green sea monster tentacle about to grab this guy around the neck or whatever. So this is a scene of tension and fear, but it's also because we need to have that vertical space so that Teemo and Ava's big backpack can both be, like, occupying the scene without, again, if we untilted it, Ava's backpack would just kind of vanish out of the scene. And then we have these two motherfuckers, and I love them so much. They're so good. The tenor of terror and the bass of burden. Which are Vhagar's personal singers who sing songs about how cool Vhagar is. And there's a fantastic voice line interaction where it's like, would you like a little song, Lord Vhagar? Don't use that word! Yes, please, thank you. Which is just, is absolutely excellent. And I love that Vhagar has his own bards. I love that it's a tenor and a bass. And that they do this big opera bullshit, singing songs about how cool Lord Vhagar is. They're so good. And they're so extra. Like, they're so extra. Like, even more than Vhagar's other minions, they are so extra. And they should be, because they're like these ridiculous glam rock opera motherfuckers just standing there. It's very good. It's just a delight. Like, they're just delightful. Oh, yeah. One of the best lines. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, I kill you! I love that so much. It's so good. They're so good. They're just, like, Vhagar has some of the best followers. Like, these two dudes are so fucking fun. Then we have the Lady of Blood. And you may recognize one of the Vladimir followers in the background. The Crimson... Sorry. The Crimson something or other. The girl who's... Well, actually, let's find her. The Crimson Aristocrat, the girl who is doing a very straight heterosexual thing with her friend, the other Crimson Apprentice. Just the most heterosexual gals being pals I've ever seen in my life. They're such good friends. They're such good pals. They're just hanging out, doing gal pal stuff. Just having a good time, doing friend things. That's her. She's one of Vladimir's followers. She's part of the group of the Crimson Curators, the Crimson Disciple, who are sort of like these teenagers who are like hanging out doing blood magic stuff with Vladimir, basically because they're bored and for fun. And she turns out to be the daughter of the Lady of Blood, who has dragged her along on this expedition with the Grey Legion in order to like take down this Demacian outpost. And so here we have Esslanger explaining some stuff to the Lady of Blood herself. Lady Ferris Noradi, who seems to have a low opinion of everything. Like, look at that sneer of dismay and sort of disdain on her face. Like, she's such a fucking upper crust piece of shit. Like, just like she's just that asshole, right? Just like an absolute Malfoy. Yeah, like if you want to do the Harry Potter comparison, fuck J.K. Rowling. absolute Malfoy attitude to her. And by the way, nice camouflage, idiots. Walking through a winter landscape in red cloaks. Wow, no one's gonna spot you coming from 10 miles away. What the fuck? Like, just bring a gray cloak or something. But yeah. That's sort of all the backstory stuff. So, again, saturation, contrast, that's what highlights her as the main character, and then Eslanger as the secondary character, where you can see that he's subservient to her by the way that he sort of crouches forward a little bit, he bends over, he's leaning towards her, inclining towards her, while her posture is just straight up and down. Absolutely straight up and down. And her eyeliner is above his, she's literally looking down on him. So you get the sense that she's like the main leader, that she's in control, that she has the power in the situation, which is part of what makes her the central character. Then we have this cool motherfucker, the Watcher on the Isles, also known as the Sentinel Veteran, who just, it seems to be a light sentinel who lives on the Shadow Isles. Like, he's just there, he's just hanging out, just keeping an eye on stuff that's happening there, and he's like this old, grizzled, sort of sniper veteran dude, who just hangs out in the Shadow Isles, lights these beacons every once in a while, and just does Sentinel of Light shit, despite being on the fucking Shadow. He's just a badass dude. Like, look at that coat. He looks kind of Bloodborne-ish a little bit in his character design. Like, the way that he's put together, a little bit of that Victorian-influenced, like, with the long coat and the boots. Just a very cool character design. Compositionally, light, like we have this bright orange light that lights him up in the center of the frame, and then everything else is much more blue, gray, desaturated. He has these little hounds that are sort of lit up with the same, and this is sort of a thing about like visually creating affinity between characters. If you want characters to seem like they belong together, like the obvious thing to do is use use color to create visual affinity. Here is a very obvious example. Everything in this scene that's red is like, okay, these people clearly go together, right? Like, you're not really in doubt about that. But then with the Watcher on the Isles, you get this thing of like, oh, hey, that's the same color glow from his lantern as glows from these dogs. And because he's not like worried about them, they're not attacking him. Okay, so we can see that these are his dogs, right? Just by looking at the image, we get the sense of, okay, these are his dogs, he has command over them, and they are part of, like, his hunting crew or whatever. So, here we have an ancient warmonger, and the lore behind this is basically that Lady Noradi, and you can see the Radiant Guardian is back here. This is where she appears before she's presumably wrecked by Scion. The lore behind this is that Lady Noradi took Eslanger and her revival powers into the ancient tombs of Noxus to revive like old warriors and like corpses that have been dead for hundreds of years and use them as shock troopers as well. And so you get this Noxian warrior who's like supposed to look a little bit more like a revived ancient mummy kind of character. So they have this slightly different armor aesthetic, not very different from modern Noxus aesthetics, but slightly different. And like these spiky helmets, and like they look much more wraith-like, a little bit more ring wraithy. So in terms of framing, it's like pretty obvious. Like you have the falling body to the left of it here. You have the swoop of the axe sort of coming in there, and the falling body there. That creates like this little sort of semi-frame around the central character, which is our ancient warrior come back to life, like throwing everybody around like rag dolls, basically. And again, you can see they're doing the thing, like we have some buildings over here, we have some buildings over here, but nothing behind the character themselves, just gray sky giving us this flat backdrop. Whereas, for example, like the Radiant Guardian, you can see there's buildings behind her, there's all kind of details interfering with her silhouette, but there's nothing interfering with this guy's. I just like this one. Like, bonk. He was being inappropriately horny, and he was punished for it. Then we have the Fallen Reckoner, which is like, is apparently, like, this is a Minotaur Reckoner, someone who used to fight in the Noxian fighting pits, who's up against the Brightsteel formation, by the way, which I thought was a nice little detail, that we see the Demacians doing their Brightsteel formation thing. And so what we have here is, again, notice how, like, there's a mountain over here, there's a smoke and buildings over there, but nothing behind the character themselves. So that helps with the frame. We have the pyramid shape rising up out of the bottom of the image once again to encompass our main character. And then we have color affinity and contrast. He's all dressed in red, they're all dressed in blue. That helps contrast them out. And the usual stuff we talked about, saturation, color density, contrast, and so on and so forth. All of that centers him as a character. And then the added benefit of just characters in the scene just pointing swords at him, which again, like, very helpful. This is the main character. We got it. And I really like his pose. Like, I really like that he's got this, like, poor Demacian by the leg, and he's not even looking at him. It's like, I'll fucking throw him at you, you motherfuckers. Like, you can see he's sort of almost sort of rearing up to, like, swing this guy at them or something. Like, just a really nice dynamic character pose. Oh, right. Fallen Reckoner also has Risen Reckoner. Which is where we get this small dose of iodine salt into the bloodstream, lethal to an immortal, but simply agonizing to our patients. To the Risen, there's no greater motivator than pain. So again, it's suffering. Like, they just torture these poor creatures until they fight. And you can see here what the Reckoner is doing. He's breaking through that bright steel formation, right? Like, this formation that was being set up right here, these shield walls, he's just like, yeah, fuck your shield wall, and just bursts right on through, throwing people left and right. And again, he's making his own frame. You can see how all the bodies that are falling, how the fire, how, like, the shields, all of that creates this, like, this valley through here that becomes the frame for the character to occupy. And again, behind him, just flat gray colors so that he can be contrasted maximally against them. Moving on to Fleet Admiral Shelley, who is just, again, like, they just get the most adorable creatures. They just get the cutest fucking things. Just...
Listen here, soldier. I have, 500 confirmed kills, and I'm the top admiral in all the Marines forces. So when I say swim, you better swim, okay? Okay, thank you.
With a reference of all fucking things to the Navy SEAL copy pasta. Of all things, the Navy SEAL copy pasta. My god, how did they get away with that? But yeah, Bubba the Bubble Bear, he's right there in the background, which I think is absolutely lovely. We have him riding on this, I don't know if it's an axolotl kind of creature, it's some kind of frog, axolotl, sea creature, whatever. And of course, Admiral Shelley is just the cutest, adorable little good boy. Look how good he is. Just look how cute he is. Like, you can't look at this and not be charmed. Like, it's basically one of those, like, Lisa Frank things. Like, it's about as subtle as a fucking Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper or whatever. But it's just so cute. It's just so wholesome and so happy and so pleasant. It's just nice. I'm just happy. I'm just happy looking at it. It's just lovely. And the water is so nicely rendered. Like, this is just good. Good boys. Good boys being good. Here we have the Herald of the Magus. And like we talked about before, like, it's not 100% clear which of Serath's minions are actual people and which ones are just like elemental constructs that he's throwing into the world. This one I'd say is probably a person just because it wears clothes like quite as extensive as this, like, which clearly people clothes and not, whatever. But yeah, framing is obvious. Like, we have all these obelisks sort of like forming this frame around the central character. We have the perspective doing a lot of the framing work for us because we have all these lines that align with the sort of the character rising out. The character is centered, the character is highlighted by sunlight, the character is higher contrast, higher saturation, etc., etc. All of that is there. As the character design itself, it's like, it's fine. Like, again, like, I wish with Serath's minions that there was a clearer thematic through line. Like, there's some sort of cult worshiper, like, it's sort of meant to be this cult thing of like, oh, these are cultists who are worshipping a mad god kind of vibe to it. And so this is supposed to be essentially, like Herald of the Magus, it's supposed to be a priestess to the cult of Serath, as it were. But it's again this thing of like, well, is that, do you want it to be a cult thing, or do you want it to be a control thing, or do you want it to be like a worship of Serath's megalomania thing? Like, I feel like it could be more coherent. I feel like it could be more specific to Serath rather than just sort of like, we have this cult leader stuff, we have this enslavement stuff, like we have all these different things about escaping entrapment and things that it just doesn't quite come together for me. So then we have these two, the Mist Keepers. The Black Mist traps its victims in endless cycles of self-imposed torment. Through the Mist Catchers, Tech and Kana give those souls a chance to break that cycle for themselves. Which again ties into sort of Senna's thing, where what she's trying to do for the souls that are trapped in the Black Mist is to free them, to give them control and a chance to escape, and to, like, no longer be trapped in these cycles of eternal torment. And that seems to be how Senna views her mission as relates to the Shadow Isles as well. And so we have these two Ionian Sentinels using these special Mist Trapper weapons that seem to give these spirits, like, the ability to escape from the Black Mist. And so here, color is one of the major things that separates, because, like, everything else is green. Like, the entire scene is just green with lots of green accents and green, and a little bit of teal, and then some green and some green. Just green, 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 green. So how do we contrast that? Well, with anything that isn't green. Anything that is saturated with reds, anything that's saturated with yellows, anything that has warmth to it where everything else looks cold, we just use that, and you get this great separation of the characters from the background, where, like, you can really see that these are the central characters of the image, even if they weren't centered, even if they weren't, you know, whatever. And then you have the swoop of their weapons, of course, like, as they sort of spin around each other and protect each other's backs. The swoop of their weapons, like that big red curve through the whole thing, again, also helping to sort of frame them as central characters. It works very well. Like, they're really cool. Are the inside of a Mist Wraith? Yep. That's where they are. So, here again, Caitlin, we have the plant, the flower, everything pointing towards sea. This is from Caitlin's scene when she's doing her little presentation. And then we have the officer squad. You can see Caitlin up here, very well in the background, with her enormous pointless thigh cap, as Captain Burley here prepares the door rammer to crash the door in. And again, an object demonstration of all the stuff we've talked about already. Lots of desaturation and sort of flat color in the background of the character to help him stand out against everything else. And, like, saturation, contrast, and all the rest of it. And, like, a really good look at, like, the highly over-elaborate SWAT armor that these people run around in. Like, excellent costumes. Then we have these excellent boys. Look at them. Look at these good boys. Like, I don't know if it's supposed to be like an Indiana Jones Porro kind of thing, but look at these excellent lads. This is the, I think that's the Daring Porro. And I know that it's the Nimble Porro as well. Who are taking a sled ride, with the Poro sled. We have the prehistoric Poro here in the background as well. Just sledding through the Winter Wonderland. And then we have Indiana Jones Poro in the front with the whip. Just, yeah, it's just cute. It's just adorable. I like them. I like them quite a lot. I hope that Indiana Jones Poro gets, like, his own card elsewhere. Like, I don't know where he'd be, but, like, that would be very cool. But yeah, this seems to be in either Ionia or Bandel City, or, like, the Bandel City region itself, just because we've got floating rocks in the background and we've got, like, this spiraling, sort of curling wood. Which is weird because it's a Freljord Bandel City card, so you'd think that, you know, but yeah. But yeah, this is just adorable. Like, all the same things we've talked about before apply here, but this is just an adorable little scene. With, like, using the golden sunlight really well to contrast, like, the living characters with the environment. And also, the golden sunlight also has the added effect that it makes everything feel a little warmer, right? Like, it doesn't feel like a cold, unforgiving, blighted, snowy landscape where nothing can live. No, it feels like a really nice, sort of late, like late in the day, golden hour, sort of winter's day where you're out sledding with your friends. It feels idyllic. It feels fun rather than sort of hostile and difficult to endure. Let's see, that was the Yordle sled, which means the Sand Seer is next. Another one of Zerath's minions, and this one, clearly, being an actual human person who's partially transformed into energy by the magic of Zerath, or whatever. And I really like this card. Like, I really like this design in a lot of ways. Like, again, we have this tendency to just, for these cards, like, always with the skinniest motherfucking women. Like, every time. Where it's like, but I think it works for this particular character because, again, this is sort of the idea of Zerath, is like this replacement of all humanity with just the worship of power and nothing else. Like, so for this character, I feel like it makes sense for them to be like skeletal thin, like just barely emaciated, barely anything there, because they are being consumed by Zerath's power. Like, they're being consumed for Zerath. And they are emaciated of all, like, human sustenance because Zerath is so inhuman as a character. Like, I think it works for this character. It's just, in context of all the other incredibly skinny women characters in Legends of Runeterra, it gets so tiresome. But yeah, here you sort of see, again, this sort of mixed metaphor thing that's going on with Zerath, where on the one hand, we have all these chains, we have all these obelisks, like all this prison imagery, and then on the other hand, we have all this, like, I am, like, unlimited cosmic power, blah, blah, energy wraith thing going on. That, again, I think they haven't quite reconciled it, but, like, I do really like this character design, like, and I really like the idea of, like this beacon of light, like, almost as though she's beaming cosmic power right into her head. You can see how, like, her hair is these, like, energy tendrils that sort of mix and merge with the stars in the sky, almost as though she's part of the cosmos in some way. Like, that's very cool. And there's sort of, like, a cool way to frame Zerath's ambition, like, as essentially a cosmic ambition. That would be quite interesting. And here's Ari, by the way. She's just there. Hi, Ari. You're here. You're gonna be a card? We don't know. You're in a card. You're right there. Just hanging out with the Tailcloak Matriarch. So that's a thing. It also confirms to us, like, this is the first time we've seen, I think, another of Ari's people of the Vastaya, or at least another, like, many-tailed creature of Ari's people, because as I recall from Ari's lore, she doesn't have a family. Like, she doesn't know where she's from. She doesn't know who her parents were. She doesn't know, like, why she is the way she is, and she's constantly traveling across the world trying to find answers. So having another character who has those multiple tails as a Vastaya, it seems like that should be kind of a big deal for Ari. But yeah, she's just there. And she's like a secret keeper or something. Like, she's someone who has something to do with mysteries or whatever. But yeah, Ari might have found her family. I guess. So, not a lot of framing. Like, again, we have, like, the main character being the Tailcloak Matriarch. You can notice, again, they make sure to give her clean sky behind her. Not a lot of details behind her. She's above Ari. Like, she's sort of, like, touching Ari's neck or whatever. Yeah, it's hard to remember what's canon with Ari because her lore keeps changing. Yep, it changes a lot. It changes often. But yeah, like, clear sky behind her. She's highlighted by, like, the light. You can see her face especially is highlighted by the light from the lanterns, where Ari's is a little bit more in shadow. And it all helps sort of make her the central character of the piece, with Ari as a secondary. Then there's the Bandel Tree, aka the I might randomly win the game if you don't remove me from play card. Which is the idea is that this is the heart of Bandel City. Like, this is the central thing that Bandel City is organized around. And all of these branches that sort of branch out and create portals and create, like, gateways to other worlds and routes and like leaves all of it as part of like this great world tree, basically. Like the Bandel Tree is so large that it has no beginning or end. And so all of the Yordle adventures, like Vhagar's castle is somewhere on the Bandel Tree. Ziggs's laboratory is somewhere on the Bandel Tree. Like everything that happens in Bandel City happens on one of the branches of this tree, like Yggdrasil, essentially. And so here we can see the Bandel City Mayor getting ready to give a speech. So like this is in advance of like Teemo, Tristana, all the people coming there to hear the speech of the Bandel City Mayor for some anniversary or something, who knows. And yeah, you can see sort of the design elements of Bandel City. Like, you can see these spirals. Like Bandel City is very organized around spirals. Like, if you ever see trees with spiraling branches like this, that's because it's a Bandel City thing. Like, it's a Bandel City card, it's a Bandel City something. And you can see that, like, carry over into the City Hall, which is just nothing but these sort of spirals turning in on themselves over and over again in the aesthetic. It's very good. Oh, excuse me. So here we have the cool guys don't look at explosions thing. We look so cool right now, Tristana. Cool guys don't look at explosions as the Bandel City Gunners walk away from a successful blowing something up. It's just a cool little scene. And here we have our girl, Ava Achiever. Just such an excellent character. Like, the moment I saw her in the animated short, I just fell in love with her, and she's so good. Because she's just like a really sort of dedicated Yordle scout who just wants Teemo's approval. And here we see her get it because she's showing off the puff cap traps, like the Yordle snap traps that she's developed to Teemo, and he's giving her the big thumbs up, like, "Hey, yeah, good job. That's a great Yordle tool." And she's even getting approval from the big buff Yordle here in the background as well. And it's lovely. And again, compositional elements, we have this separation, like she rises out on this little sort of semi-triangular shape here. She's separated from the other two minor characters. She's bigger than them. She's above them. All these things are present and makes her the central character of the image. Then there's this thing. And like, damn. Like, wow, okay, so it's a Manta Ray, sort of, with this, like, weird sort of segmented, almost centipede-like body coming off from behind it, and, like, these multiple eyes up at the front, or whatever the hell they are. I don't even know if they're eyes, like, thing. Again, just, like, the sea creatures that they've designed for this are just so fucking cool. Like, they're just so cool. It's so many cool sea creatures. They look so badass, and weird, and alien, and, like, strange. Yeah, rules. Nami's up here. We have the warden down here, and it's just like, it's just a very, like, it's just a fucking cool Manta Ray monster. Ghost Leviathan thing. Yeah, it looks like the Ghost Leviathan from the Subnautica. Just absolutely gorgeous creature. Let's see, how far are we from the end? Well, I mean, we still need to do the expansion from the Sentinels of Light thing, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So, remember way the hell back in Caitlyn's level 2 art. Caitlyn's confronting Corina in her hideaway in Piltover, Swamp, somewhere, whatever, like her greenhouse. She's holding this detonator behind her back. Well, this is the aftermath of that. She's pushed the detonator. She has this chemtech apparatus or something tied into her, which presumably makes her immune to the poison gas that she's unleashing all over everything. You can see Caitlyn in the background trying to chase her. You can see one of the police like succumbing to the gas over here because the idiots weren't wearing gas masks. Haha, stupid morons. As she's just calmly and confidently strolling away from a plan well executed. And so again, a little bit of a pyramid shape rising out of the bottom of the image, and she's just like more saturated, contrast, all the stuff we've talked about already. But the real star of the show here really isn't Corina. Like, she's gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but the real star of the show is like all the green and the plants and like the purples and just the elaborateness of this giant plant conservatory or whatever the hell it is that she's building all of this stuff inside. Like, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous scene just all around. Like, I really like this art. Like, this is just gorgeous artwork. Not just the character, but the background. It's just mwah. Beautiful. Absolutely excellent. Beguiling Blossom. And there's a tie-in also, like, you remember that motorcycle cop who was chasing down that truck that was delivering those canisters? Yeah, it's those canisters. And she seems to be growing her plants on or around them somehow. So again, like, it all sort of ties together.